I admit, I wasn't looking forward to watching Screams Before Silence. How could you anticipate a movie like this? Of course, this is the documentary by Sheryl Sandberg, the former Facebook CEO, about the atrocities of October 7th. What she did was she traveled to Israel and she interviewed the survivors of all these different attacks at the music festival, just in various places around Israel. And she got them to tell their stories. And their stories are nothing short of horrifying. It's the kind of film and the kind of project where when you say words fail, it seems like a kind of a cute or cloying way to describe something, but really, words fail. In fact, one of the people who experienced the atrocities, she said that it was about redefining evil. And I thought that was maybe the most accurate thing to be said about this film. What happened on October 7th was redefining evil. And what this movie does is showcase that evil.
When the body of the woman is violated, it symbolizes the body of the whole nation.
His name was Muhammad. He used to sit on the bed in front of me. I knew that something bad is gonna happen.
And before you think, oh my gosh, must be excruciating to watch, the gore, the carnage, no, those images are blurred. This is not that kind of presentation. But what we're seeing here is something more profound. We're hearing the testimony, and to hear it described, we can all paint those pictures in our minds. It's almost more powerful and more shocking. Now, this is a project that is available now for free, or you can go to screamsbeforesilence.com. No ticket price. This is not a capitalistic endeavor. This is a testament to the people who suffered the most unbelievable atrocities that day, that we don't forget, that we can't forget. And I think on that stage alone, this is a wildly successful project. But of course, it's much more than that. You know, watching Hollywood after October 7th has been fascinating, frustrating, illuminating at times as well. And, there have been some stars who have been very outspoken from the start, including Patricia Heaton, Michael Rappaport, and others like John Cusack. Well, words fail again, because what is his one-note condemnation of Israel and his support for the Palestinian cause is so mechanical and so thuggish at times. It defies description. And I know his career is not what it used to be, and it's not as white hot as back in the 80s and 90s, but I can't imagine being a Jewish actor or actress showing up on the set and saying, oh, there's John Cusack. Imagine that. Must be awkward, to say the very least. But back to the documentary. One of the things that's so powerful about this movie is that the people are able to speak of what they saw, of what they experienced, of what they suffered. And there's one person in the documentary in particular who said that she worked, or is working possibly, in the morgue. She's dealing with the body bags. And she said, it's my duty, it's my responsibility to be stoic, to be calm, because once I let my emotions get the better of me, then I can no longer speak, certainly not on camera. Sheryl Sandberg, who is the driving force behind this movie, is almost like the everywoman. She's there on screen. She's consoling some of the people as they share their shocking stories. And it's almost like she is our conduit. She is us. She is our representative, where we can watch this movie and think, that's what I would be doing. That's what I would be saying. That's how I would treat the people who are sharing these unimaginable stories. I'd be hugging them. I'd be holding them. I'd be putting my hands on their shoulders, because how else could you respond? It's a very human reaction. And I think her approach is smart, because I don't think you need a clinical journalistic point of view in this regard from an inquisitor like this. You need someone who is human and who understands, at least can scrape the surface of what happened that day. One of the things that's interesting is that Sandberg gives herself a close-up at one point in the film, and she kind of processes what she's been through, why this is important to her. And it felt a little tacky is too strong a word, but not appropriate. Let's just put it that way. But I also think that she made this happen. She went to Israel. She interviewed these people. She coaxed these stories out of them. So I'm certainly in a forgiving mood for a cinematic mistake or a cinematic misstep, because the rest of the film is so powerful. It's hard to ask yourself why this movie is free. Was there any attempt to make a theatrical release out of this? It's possible she just wanted as many people as possible to see it, and that is certainly noble. But I do wonder, just given what's going on in Hollywood, is anyone vying for this movie? Was there pressure not to put this movie out? Those are legitimate questions. We'll have to find out more as time marches on. We'll also have to see if other documentary filmmakers are able to step up and share these stories, because they need to be shared, and not just in one format, but across TV docuseries, feature films, streaming platforms. This has to get out there. Obviously, I've really kind of buried the lead here, because the story really is about sexual violence against women. It is horrifying, story after story. It is just hard to process and hard to believe that people had to endure what they did endure. And, part of the visual presentation is from Hamas. They were recording much of their atrocities. They were filming. They seemed to be either proud of it or they wanted to share it with the world. And so we get a glimpse of what's happening. We get a glimpse of festival goers at that music event running for their lives. We see a woman being dragged on a motorcycle. We see people being pushed into cars. It's indescribable. It truly is. The movie is only an hour long. I think that's a very wise choice. I don't know how much more you could watch of this. But at the end of the day, you get the story, you get the idea, you understand what's going on. Another part of the film, which was powerful but almost unnecessary, we see some of the Hamas terrorists being interviewed. I guess a few were captured along the way, and they were describing some of their actions. And it's the least satisfying part of the movie. They certainly don't come across as monsters per se. They seem confused, addled even. They're almost trying to defend some of their actions. But it doesn't really add up to anything as a storytelling device. And I almost think it should have been left aside. Another really powerful part of this presentation is what it leaves out. This is not about the Israel-Palestinian divide. It is not about their intractable conflict. It is not about what's happening right now in Gaza. It is focused on this event. And I think that's a smart approach, because it is so consequential and it's unlike anything we've seen in the modern world. And you have to go back to the Nazi era. And I almost think what the Nazis did, as inhumane as it is, I don't know if it can compare to what we're seeing here. Obviously, it was a much greater scale. 6 million people died as opposed to 1,200 here. But the way that the terrorists treated the Jewish people, old, young, women in particular, it's hard to imagine a more reprehensible act, collectively speaking. Another part of the film, which I think is really important, is that there are men here speaking, people who are working in security, and just to have their input as well, because their pain is so palpable. Obviously the women suffered directly, but you get the sense that these men would have done anything to stop what was happening, the rapes, the torture. And then there are the smaller details, which are unimaginable. Body parts being cut off and discarded. Again, this is very, just to repeat what's shared here is upsetting, but it has to be shared. It has to be said. It has to be captured. It has to be documented for future generations. I know that Steven Spielberg has been mostly quiet about the October 7th attacks, at least initially. And then he finally spoke out and said he's going to be working on getting the testimonies of the people who survived that horrible day. And he's going to use them, again, as an educational tool to kind of capture what happened, to make sure we don't forget. But I think the whole never forget, that whole motif just seems almost comical right now. We see what's happening on college campuses across the world. We see how so many stars have ignored not only October 7th, but the hostages who are still being held by Hamas. Michael Rappaport, the actor, has been just nonstop and very critical of his fellow stars, saying, where are you? Why haven't you used your clout, your voice, your platforms to demand their release? And he's absolutely right. It is shocking that we went through an entire award season, the Oscars and the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards, not a peep about the hostages. I'm older than I should be, but I do remember the hostages in the late 1970s and how it was a drumbeat on the news. And yet there are still hostages who are held, and there are still Americans within that group, and yet it's barely mentioned on the news. So it's hard not to watch Screams Before Silence and think about all these issues and how they flood our senses and how they matter. But the bottom line is that someone did make this movie. It is powerful. It can be seen anywhere at this point, and it should be seen. And one last thought, it's only been a few days since the film's been released, but where are the critics? Now, I will say the Wrap.com reviewed the film, as they should, but I haven't seen many other film critics do the same. Will they? Will they ignore this movie? What are they waiting for? It's already been available. You don't need a ticket. You don't need a screening link. It's for free. It's just the click of a button and you can see the entire film. Now, again, as I said at the opening, I wasn't raring to see this movie. Who could possibly be eager to see something so profound and so upsetting? But we should. We all should. Screams Before Silence is a powerful documentary and a document to what happened on that day. And the fact that too many people have forgotten already, that's a stain on all of us. Well, hope you enjoyed the review. I also hope you subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast and, of course, this YouTube channel. I know this wasn't a fun segment. This wasn't an uplifting segment. I will try to be more fun next time, but some things have to be said, have to be shared. And I will see you next time.